She was alone. No phone signal, no water, no idea where she was, and the Nevada sun was already turning the air into something you could barely breathe. This is the story of Jennifer Holliday, a woman who drove into the Nevada desert on an ordinary day and almost never came back. A woman who spent days fighting the most brutal environment in America, with nothing but her own two hands, her own broken body, and a will to survive that defied every medical explanation anyone could offer. This is not a story about a trained soldier or a seasoned outdoorsman. This is a story about an ordinary woman who was put into an impossible situation and refused to accept the only outcome the desert had planned for her. By the time rescuers found her, she was barely recognizable. Her skin was burned raw. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. She could not speak. She could not walk on her own. She had been out there for days in temperatures that should have killed her, and the doctors who treated her said the same thing that everyone who hears this story says: she should not have survived. The numbers did not add up. The timeline did not make sense. A human body does not do what her body did and come back from it in one piece. But she did. And the question that haunts everyone who learns about Jennifer Holliday is the same question I want you to sit with tonight. What exactly keeps a person alive when everything around them is trying to shut them down? Before we get into the details, let me tell you what the next few minutes of your life are going to feel like. You are going to feel the heat. You are going to feel the thirst. You are going to feel the specific weight of silence that only the desert can produce. You are going to be inside Jennifer's mind during the moments she thought she was going to die. And then you are going to feel what it means to choose life when every nerve in your body is begging you to stop. This story is not comfortable. It is not supposed to be, but it is real, and it matters. Nevada is not just a state. It is a warning. The remote stretches of Nevada that sit far from any city or highway are some of the most inhospitable land in the entire United States. Miles and miles of nothing, flat earth broken by rock formations and shallow valleys, scrub brush that looks gray and defeated, even in the best conditions, mountains that sit on the horizon like a promise that never gets any closer, no matter how long you walk toward them. And above everything, that sky, that enormous, merciless, unblinking blue sky with the sun sitting dead center like it is daring you to try to outlast it. In the summer months, which is when Jennifer found herself trapped out there, the temperatures in remote Nevada regularly climb above 110 degrees Fahrenheit. In certain low-lying areas where the heat collects and the wind dies, it can reach 120 or higher. The ground itself, the rocks, the sand, the cracked earth, absorbs all of that heat all day and radiates it back at you like a furnace. There is no shade unless you create it. There is no natural water unless you know exactly where to look. And even then, there is no guarantee. The animals that live out there are built for it. Reptiles that can shut down their metabolism and survive on almost nothing. Birds that fly high enough to catch cooler air. Even the plants have evolved over thousands of years to hold on to every single drop of moisture they can find. A human being, especially one who is not prepared, has none of those tools. A human being out there is just a body of water slowly evaporating under a sky that does not care. Jennifer Holliday did not plan to be there. That is the part of the story that is both the most ordinary and the most terrifying. She was not on some kind of adventure. She was not making a poor decision out of arrogance. She ended up out there through a chain of small, ordinary mistakes, the kind that any one of us could make, and have probably made 100 times without consequence. A wrong turn taken too confidently. A road that looked like it went somewhere and did not. A moment of thinking she knew where she was when she did not. And by the time she understood that something had gone seriously wrong, she was already too far in. Her vehicle became an immediate problem. The terrain in that part of Nevada is not made for regular cars and trucks. It is made for nothing. It is made to break things down and swallow them up. When her vehicle became stuck, the situation shifted from inconvenient to dangerous faster than her mind was ready to process. Getting out and walking seemed like the only option. Walking to find a road. Walking to find another person. Walking to find anything that was not just more desert in every direction. She started walking. She had some water with her. Not enough, but some. She had her phone, which had no signal. She had the clothes she was wearing, which were not built for what was about to happen to her body. She started walking in what she believed was the right direction. She told herself it was not that far. She told herself she would find help soon. She told herself this was temporary. That is what the mind does in the beginning of a crisis. It minimizes. It reassures. It tells comfortable lies because the truth is too large to carry all at once. The first hour was hard but manageable. The second hour was harder. By the third hour, the reality of her situation had broken through every comfortable lie her brain had been telling her. She was not close to a road. She was not close to anything. The sun was not going to give her a break because she needed one, and the water she had been sipping as carefully as she could was almost gone. She made herself slow down. Not stop, but slow down. She had heard somewhere, or maybe read somewhere, that in heat like this, conserving energy was as important as finding water. Moving slower used less water. She did not know if that was exactly true, but it was all she had, so she held on to it. She moved from one patch of shadow to another, staying in whatever tiny strips of shade she could find behind rocks or in shallow depressions in the earth. She sat when she could. She got up when she made herself. She kept going. The water ran out. There is a particular moment that survivors of desert ordeals describe that does not translate easily into words. It is the moment the last drop is gone. It is not just thirst. It is a psychological shift. Up until that moment, no matter how bad things are, there is still something. There is still a resource. There is still a buffer between you and the worst possible version of what is happening. When that buffer disappears, everything changes. The fear moves into a different register. It becomes quieter and more serious. It stops being panic and starts being a kind of cold, clear terror that is almost calm. Jennifer kept walking. The sun started going down in the late afternoon and the relief was immediate but short-lived. Yes, the temperature dropped. Yes, the air became slightly more breathable. But with the dark came a cold that she was completely unprepared for. The Nevada desert at night in summer can drop to the 50s or even the 40s after a day that was over 100. That is a swing of 60 or 70 degrees. Her body, already stressed and dehydrated and burned from hours in direct sun, was now also trying to generate warmth. It did not have the resources to produce. She found a spot between two large rocks that blocked some of the wind. She pulled her knees to her chest. She lay as still as she could to keep the heat her body was producing from escaping into the air around her. She did not sleep. Not really. She drifted in and out of something that was not sleep and not wakefulness. A gray space in between where her body rested minimally, while her mind kept producing images she did not ask for. She heard sounds she could not identify. Clicks and creaks from rocks cooling in the dark. Wind moving through scrub brush somewhere in the distance. Once, something that sounded like it was moving close by, and she held completely still and did not breathe until the sound stopped. She did not know what it was. She told herself it was nothing. She held on to that. When the sun came up on the second day, Jennifer Holliday was still alive. She sat up slowly. Every muscle ached. Her mouth was so dry that her tongue was sticking to the roof of it. Her lips had started to crack overnight. She looked out at the desert around her in the pale morning light before the heat arrived again, and she made a decision. She was going to keep moving. She was going to find water, or she was going to find a road, or she was going to find a person. She was not going to stay still and let this place take her. She started walking again. The second day is where it gets harder to describe, because the second day is where Jennifer's mind started to play tricks on her. Dehydration and heat do not just attack the body. They attack the brain. They attack the ability to think clearly. They attack the ability to distinguish between what is real and what is a product of desperation. She saw things on the second day that were not there. She saw a dark shape on the horizon that looked exactly like a truck parked on a road. She walked toward it for almost an hour. It was a rock formation. She saw a glimmer in a low area between two hills that looked exactly like water. She changed direction toward it. Heat. Shimmer off a flat stretch of baked earth. These false sightings are documented in survival literature. They even have names. The brain under extreme stress begins to generate the images it needs to see. It literally manufactures hope out of nothing, because without hope, the body will stop moving. In a strange way, those hallucinations may have actually kept her moving. Every false water source was still a destination. Every mirage was still a direction. And moving in any direction was better than giving up in place. She found something on the second afternoon that she said later felt like a message. Under a large flat rock that had a slight overhang, The ground was darker, cooler. She put her hand against it. Damp, not wet, not water, just faintly damp soil that had held on to some moisture from what might have been a rain weeks ago. She pressed her face against it. She breathed it in. The amount of moisture she got from that soil was almost nothing in any objective measurement, but it was real. It was not a hallucination, and the cool of the rock against her burned skin was something she described later as one of the most intense physical sensations she had ever experienced in her life. She stayed there through the worst of the afternoon heat. She rested as much as her mind would let her. She rationed her energy the way she had tried to ration her water, and when the sun moved lower in the sky and the air became slightly less lethal, she got up and she walked. The second night was harder than the first. The dehydration had moved deeper into her system. Her muscles were cramping, not discomfort, pain, the kind of muscle cramps that make you gasp and stop completely and press your hands into the earth and just breathe until they pass. Her urine, when she had any, was the color of dark amber, which is what severe dehydration looks like from the inside. Her head was pounding. Her vision had gone slightly strange at the edges, not a blur exactly, but a shimmer, an instability, like the world around her was not quite certain of its own edges anymore. She lay down in the cold, and she looked up at the stars, and she let herself think about her children. She did not think in full sentences. She did not compose speeches or have revelations. She just let their faces exist in her mind. The specific way each of them laughed, the weight of them when they were small enough to carry, the sound of their voices saying her name. She held those things in her mind. The way you hold something fragile and precious, carefully, with both hands, not gripping too tight because you are afraid of breaking it. She said later that in those moments, she was not thinking about survival strategy. She was not thinking about what to do next. She was just thinking about the fact that they existed, and she loved them, and she was going to see them again. That decision, that simple, fierce, non-negotiable decision, that is what the third day was built on. When the sun rose on the third day, Jennifer Holliday's body was in a medical crisis. Even if she did not have the clinical language to describe it, her core temperature had been elevated for too long. Her electrolytes were dangerously imbalanced. Her kidneys were beginning to show the strain of operating without adequate fluid. She was dizzy when she stood. She stumbled more than she walked. Her brain, starved of proper hydration, was not processing information the way it should. But she stood up, on legs that shook, with a head that pounded, with lips so cracked they bled when she moved them. She stood up, and she started walking. She had no strategy anymore. Strategy requires cognitive resources she no longer had. What she had was simpler than strategy. She had a direction. She had legs that still moved when she told them to, and she had that one clear repeating thought. Move. Just move. One step, then one more. It does not matter how slow. It does not matter how much it hurts. Do not stop. The rescue team had been out since the day before. When Jennifer had not returned and had not made contact, people had reported her missing. Search and rescue had gone out into the desert with vehicles and on foot and by air, covering grids of territory in the brutal heat, looking for any sign of a person or a vehicle. It is slow work. The desert does not give up its secrets easily. Hours passed. The search expanded. On the third morning, a team member spotted something that did not fit. A movement, slow and unsteady, out in the open flat ground, where nothing should have been moving like that. They moved toward it. They thought at first it might be an animal, something injured or disoriented. They got closer, and then they understood what they were looking at. Jennifer was still moving when they reached her. She did not stop when she heard them. She did not stop when they called out to her. She kept walking. They had to come alongside her and gently stop her because she was so locked into the motion that her mind had not fully registered that the reason for moving was over. She had been moving for so long that stopping had become the thing she could not do. They gave her water slowly, carefully, pouring tiny amounts into her cracked and bleeding mouth and waiting and doing it again. She could not speak. She could barely respond. They carried her to the vehicle. She held onto someone's arm, and she did not let go. At the hospital, the doctors worked quickly. IV fluids to replace what her body had lost. Careful monitoring of her core temperature, attention to her electrolytes, her kidney function, her heart. The burns on her skin were treated. Her blood was tested. The results came back, and one of the doctors said quietly, that they were looking at someone who had been hours away from organ failure. Maybe less, another few hours in that desert, and the damage would not have been something medicine could reverse. She was alive. She was going to stay alive, but the road back was long. The physical recovery took time. The psychological recovery took longer. The desert does not let you go easily. It follows you home. It sits in the corner of rooms when you are trying to sleep. It shows up in your dreams as silence and heat, and the specific terror of knowing you are completely alone. Jennifer had to work through all of that. She had to rebuild her trust in her own judgment. She had to find a way to make peace with the fact that she had come that close to not coming back at all. What helped her most, she said, was the same thing that had kept her alive out there. Her children, coming home to them, sitting with them, letting the reality of them, warm and solid and present, push out the cold memory of those days in the desert. She did not talk about what happened right away. She let herself just be home first. Let herself just exist in the world that she had fought so hard to get back to. She talks about it now. She talks about it because she believes it matters. Because she thinks that her story is not just her story. She thinks that every person who hears it learns something about themselves, about the reserves that exist inside all of us, about what the human body can endure when the human mind refuses to give the body permission to stop. She did not survive because she was exceptional. She survived because she was stubborn, and she loved her children, and she would not stop moving. That is the whole story. That is all of it. No special training, no supernatural strength, no dramatic rescue at the last possible second, just a woman and a desert, and a decision that she made over and over again, every hour, every stumbling step, every time the voice in her head said, "Stop," and she told that voice, "Not yet, not yet." So here's the question I want you to sit with tonight, and I mean really sit with it. If everything was stripped away, no comfort, no guarantee, no rescue coming that you could count on, just you, alone, and the choice between moving and stopping, what would be your reason? What would be the thing that you would hold in your mind the way Jennifer held her children's faces? What would keep your legs moving when your legs had every biological reason to give out? Tell me in the comments. Because I think that question matters more than most of us ever stop to realize. And I think your answer says something true and important about who you are. Tell me.